You know, when I read today's epistle, the very first verse, so long as the heir is a child, he is no different from a bondservant. I'm reminded of something my aunt said to me back when I was 11, 12 years old. We're out, we're going for a ride in her brand new Daytona, and she looks at me and says, Jason, that song is right. Hell is for children. Because when you're a kid, all you have is some idiot with an ego problem telling you what to do. But when you're a grown-up, you can do whatever the hell you want. And that's what I was reminded of. I haven't even thought of that conversation for over 30 years. But that's what I was reminded of when I read that first verse today from the epistle. And there's a truth to that. In fact, it's also funnier because I said today's theme is manifestation. And I'm going to tie this in. Because also it says, so we also, when we were children, i.e. when we were spiritually blind, were held in bondage under the elements of the world. Now I want you to think about that too. I want you to think about that when we were blind. When we were children, we were spiritually blind. We were in bondage by the elements of the world. This could be applied to before we knew about gravity, before we knew about the atom. It could apply to before we knew about how business works. It could apply to before we knew how spirituality works and how the things of the spirit work. As occultists and magicians, that latter is the most important. We were held in bondage to forces which we did not understand. We were held in bondage to forces that we did not know how to overcome and therefore did not have the means to overcome. Yet, in the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son, born to a woman, born under the law, that he might redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And that's why God sent forth the Spirit into our hearts, saying, Father, Abba, Father, crying out to him in love. That Spirit that was sent is the power to overcome the elements. That Spirit that was sent. And one of those gifts is a spirit of knowledge. Another is a spirit of wisdom. Notice this. Also notice that the Son was born under the law. I've said elsewhere, particularly in How to Pray the Rosary and Get Results, that understanding the law is the key to working its limitations. When we understand how nature works, we can work with the forces of nature in their own language and in their own manner. And we can get what we want. This is how manifestation works. And so while the season of Advent was a celebration of expectation, the explanation of expectation, to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent, the things that go into the 4 keys of the mage, the 4 keys to making magic work, because that's expectation. The Christmas season is devoted to manifestation. Because while we have expected, while we have awaited the birthday of Jesus, this past Tuesday we celebrated his birthday. And yes, I'm well aware of the controversy of whether he was born in December or born in the spring or any of that. For purposes of the liturgy, I'm not paying attention to that controversy. Because ultimately speaking, unless somebody invents a DeLorean and goes back to the day when he was born and can tell us the exact date, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a day that we are celebrating. Now, we celebrate manifestation. We talk about manifestation. As Christmas Day was a manifestation of him whom we have been expecting. I hope you're with me so far, because I know I'm kind of dancing around. Yet, what does manifestation bring with it? These are the lessons of the days since Christmas. Now, I know I didn't do a service on Christmas. Truth be told, Christmas Eve turned out to be a pretty weird day for me, so I wouldn't have been able to anyway. But I would have talked about manifestation. I would have talked about the wonder that it is when you're doing work to manifest, say, let's see, my first magical operation, I was breaking up an abusive relationship. And when you do that kind of work, it felt great once I saw the effects. Actually, I think I saved somebody's life. You know, it felt great to have those effects. There's that wonderful, joyous feeling at manifestation. provided it's not something that involves buyer's remorse. Well, I'll tell you some of those stories later on. In fact, I'm pretty sure every one of you has at least one such story, where you did magical work to manifest something, and then you turned out to be, you didn't really want this. It came with too high of a price, or maybe you stepped on the wrong toes. But the thing about manifestation is, it can also have side effects. And this is what I like talking about the Feast of St. Stephen, the Feast of St. John, and the Feast of the Holy Innocents, December 26th, 27th, and 28th, respectively, because we can talk about these allegorically as side effects for manifestation. Okay, one example of manifestation having side effects. I actually told this story on Patreon a little while ago. I had a friend in New Orleans. Her name was Rhiannon, and she had this friend that was coming in for her to do tarot readings, that she was looking for a new boyfriend. And Rhiannon's readings always kept coming up with the King of Cups. This is who this person is represented as. She asked me if I would do some magical work in order to help this happen. Now, this was back in the late spring, early summer of '99. Okay, fine. What I did, some of you may be familiar with the Ama May operation found in Ritual Magic for Conservative Christians. What I did was, I took the card, the King of Cups, and I used the name Rex Calicum as a Latin for King of Cups or King of Chalices, as a stand-in for this guy. I used that, and I used her friend's name in the prayer. All right, fine. I just did this, said the prayer 7 times, like the ritual says, every day for about 7 days. Actually, I don't remember how many days. But 2 things happened. First, Rhiannon's friend, she met her soulmate at this party. Totally happened. And then, I was having all kinds of side effects. I wasn't doing this for me, but all of a sudden, women were throwing themselves at me. I wasn't ordained to the priesthood yet, so I wasn't doing anything wrong. Women were throwing themselves at me. I had never had this happen before. I didn't know how to react. I was the nerd in school. I wasn't the jock. I wasn't the Chad. I wasn't the guy who had all kinds of attention. I wasn't the guy who made everybody a friend. I wasn't that guy. I was the weirdo. But, so, all these women were throwing themselves at me. Some were my type, some weren't. Some were more attractive, some weren't. Some were smarter, some weren't. You know, it was just like takes all kinds. Like, there wasn't any specific type. There wasn't any specific type that was coming at me. It was like a general vibration was sent out, and they were all coming to me. And then July 3rd of 1999, I go to this party called the Bat Party. I'm actually working on writing this post right now. And I end up meeting somebody who, up to that point, actually her name was Becky. She was my first encounter with Asatru, and she was probably my first actual relationship, come to think about it. We didn't last long, but the fact is, I wasn't working any of this for myself, but all of these side effects were happening. All these side effects were happening because I did the work, and I guess I didn't control for how much output I was putting out. I'm not sure how to describe it. But there's a way to control for the output you're putting out when you do magic. And so this happened. Now here's the thing. Manifestation doesn't always come with good consequences like that. Did I just kick the camera? Shame on me. It doesn't always come with good consequences. The question comes, what are you willing to give up in order to manifest your vision? What are you willing to give up in order to manifest your intent? And that's what we have on the Feast of St. Stephen. The Feast of St. Stephen, we have the story of Stephen, one of the first deacons in the church, and he was also the first martyr, the first person to die for his faith. And what happened, the story's pretty well known. It's in the book of Acts, chapter 6 and 7. The story's pretty well known. He was stoned to death. He would not give up his belief in Jesus. And so he was executed. So, what do we gain from this? What we gain from this is, anything we manifest is going to come with a price. Okay, Jen says, that was weird. I'm a little bit confused. What part was weird? I'm gonna keep talking while I'm waiting. Okay, what we do, it comes with a price. The price, it may not be our life. Hopefully, it won't be, but it can be our old life. For example, the work that I did for Rhiannon, it came at the price of me having to give up my old life, my old way of looking at things, particularly my old way of looking at social relationships and social dynamics. I was now in a world where for some reason or other I was seen as very attractive. I had to learn how to do, I know, looking at me right now, you can't tell that. I know. But the thing was, I had to learn. I had a... It's okay. No worries. Okay, I had to deal with... Okay, my old way of looking at things, my old way of dealing with people was over. I now have multiple people that are talking to me in a different way they never would have when I was in high school. I also was in a very different circle of friends at that point. So I had to learn new ways of talking to people, new ways of interacting with people, and new ways of thinking, seeing, and doing things. That was the price for the magic I did for Rhiannon. So what we learn on the Feast of St. Stephen is the price of manifestation, the price of belief. And we also see one side effect of that, of the price that Stephen paid for his belief. That at the end of the story of Stephen's martyrdom, at the very end of that story, one of the people who was in the crowd was Saul of Tarsus, a vehement persecutor of Christians. And that Saul in the crowd, this was one of his steps on the road to his transformation at Damascus, where he became Paul, the least of the apostles. And if you must know, Pavlos in Greek means little piece. In fact, the modern Greek pronunciation of Pavlos is where the Spanish pronunciation of Pavlo comes from. In Latin, it's Paulus, which is where the English Paul comes from. Okay, and so what happened was, Stephen paid the price, and Stephen's price helped to result in the conversion of the apostles to the Gentiles. And therefore the conversion of pretty much the entire known world. I won't say the entire known world, because India and China were known in Paul's time. They were known about. But the conversion of the empire, which then was a stepping board to Christianity being spread to all corners of the world. Be that for good or for ill, we can debate that. We really can, because the methods left something to be desired. However, that manifestation did happen. Now, we're here at the back end of history. We can only see what happened and that the message was brought out. So the side effect of manifestation, the price to be paid, led to further manifestations of Stephen's will and Stephen's desire. We'll leave it at that. When we come to the Feast of St. John, now John was the beloved apostle. He was the beloved apostle. He was also very young. He's also the only one of the apostles known to have died a natural death in exile on the island of Patmos. Now, with John we see reward. What is the reward of manifestation? What is the reward of manifestation when you're not giving up your life, when you're not giving up the things you hold dear? Well, you're still giving up the things you hold dear. He was exiled, for crying out loud. But he was also rewarded. He had visions, he had signs, he had wonders. He was rewarded. And this is why the book of Apocalypse happens. Right. Either John or somebody in his immediate circle of influence wrote the book of Apocalypse. These are the kinds of visions we can have. Now, the Apocalypse, for all the doom and gloom we have in there, it's ultimately a vision of hope. And it parallels the last 8 chapters or so of Ezekiel. The new heaven, the new earth, the new Jerusalem, and how it's laid out. It parallels. The book is a book of hope. The book was a book of future hope against a present-day time of persecution, when Christians were being persecuted under Nero. Right, Tacitus talks about this in his Annals, where the Christians are the ones who are being blamed for the fires in Rome, because Nero found them a convenient scapegoat. So when we manifest something, we have to look at these things. What are the rewards? What are the risks? Right. What is the return on investment ratio to what we're doing? And any magical work is an investment. So, and we also have to learn how do these energies work with us. The work I did with Rhiannon, I keep referring to it because it was a teaching moment for me. The work I did with Rhiannon, I had no idea how the energies would react with me. I learned, and I learned the hard way. Now, in the first magical work I did, I was breaking up a relationship. Okay, I break up a relationship. I didn't get side effects there. I can't even say I lost a friendship over this. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was doing it for selfless reasons. I was doing this because I legitimately wanted this woman to be out of harm's way. If you must know, she was 16. The boyfriend in question, he was 21. So you already had a statutory situation. He was forcing her to pawn off her valuables in order to make his car payments, and I don't know if he was physically abusive. He was verbally abusive. There are a few other things that I'm not going to talk about, just in case certain people see this video. So I was coming at this from a selfless perspective. I want to save this woman's life. That's what was going through my mind. Now, the belief may have been misplaced, but it was my intention. So there were no side effects. I didn't lose any friends over. I didn't have any separations from family members or anything like that. But the thing was, the potential was always there. So I just want to put that out there. It's not always going to happen. But with the Feast of St. John, what are the rewards? We get to see the rewards. And it's not just the reward of being a magician, not of just manifesting things physically. It's not just that. Because as we manifest things, something else happens. I know in my case, as I repeatedly manifested things, my faith was strengthened. My faith was strengthened, my spirituality was strengthened. And so, okay, Jen says that she lost the video. Okay, I just saw the comment. Are you back yet? Okay, so my faith was strengthened, my spirituality was strengthened. And what happened was, it kept me on a journey where I was seeking further communion, further fellowship with God, which is what we should be doing. Because we're not witches, we're not sorcerers, we're theurgists. Theurgy means God working. Our manifestation comes in the name of God and in the authority of God, and they are not ends in themselves, they are helps for us on our journey to be with Him. So, theurgy is the word. I was actually having this conversation on Facebook right before broadcasting. Theurgy is probably a better word than magic. But one word is what society uses, so you know, this is how the language works. And so St. John tells us the result of the end of our theurgy. The visions, the revelations, the learning, the spirituality, the heights of spirituality to which we can reach. And then we come right to the Feast of the Holy Innocents. The Feast of the Holy Innocents, it's particularly horrific in my mind. Not that we're celebrating the Holy Innocents, we're celebrating the first to shed their blood for Jesus. That's what the Church tells us. That's why we're celebrating them. But it's rather horrific because we have the story where the wise men tell Herod, we come to adore the King of the Jews. Herod says, okay, who is he? Tell me about him when you're done. When you're done adoring him. That way I too may worship him. Well, the wise men figured out what was going on, so they went back home by a different way. Herod was none too happy about that, so he issues an edict. Slaughter every infant 2 years old or less. Now, Joseph gets a dream from an angel, because Joseph had this thing for communicating with angels in his dreams. The Gospel of Matthew is pretty consistent about that. Joseph got a tip, and so he packs Mary and Jesus, and they go to Egypt for a little while. Until an angel comes back and says, hey, you can go home now, all clear. But what does this tell us about manifestation? And I want you to notice, I'm not doing the usual historical, grammatical, or hierarchical interpretations today. I'm sticking with an allegorical interpretation. Because this more matches today's theme, and also because I'm not saying anything's outside those interpretations, the other interpretive methods. Allegorically, anytime you seek to do magic to work for something, or anytime you seek to do something by non-magical means, you will always have opposition. You will have the opposition of people who want the opposite of what you want, or you will simply have the opposition of people who just maybe mad about what you're doing. Thought is vibration. This is why keeping silent is an important part of magical work. There is such a thing as taking the whole keep silent thing to absurdities, but keeping silent helps. Now, anytime you plan to do work, there will always be opposition. And sometimes your opponents will go to insane means in order to stop you. They will go to insane means, they will dig in their heels, and they will do horrific things to stop you. Now really, we say God is all-knowing and all-powerful. Surely God knew that Herod planned to kill these infants. Surely God was powerful enough to stop this from happening. However, he did not. He didn't stop this from happening. He let it happen. It doesn't mean he willed it to happen. We're not Calvinists at all. It doesn't mean he willed it. It means he knew about it and he permitted it to happen anyway. This may raise a question about what kind of a God do we worship? These babies didn't have a chance. These babies' mothers and fathers didn't have a chance. But what it tells us about God and about our fellow man is we will have opposition. Horrible things may happen as a result of our magic. Horrible things may happen because other people don't want us to manifest our goals, and they will do things, including trample innocent people underfoot in order to get their way. That's exactly what Herod did. He was trampling the innocent underfoot in order to get his way. What God did was send a messenger to Joseph in order to thwart Herod. Now this raises huge ethical questions about what about God's goodness? What about those babies? Huge ethical questions. My belief is that at the time the babies would have been in limbo, after which they would have been admitted into heaven. That's my personal speculation on that. Which may or may not have done the parents any good in the moment. But again, that's a huge ethical debate that I'm going to ask you to have with yourselves. I've thought about this for years, and I'm still not prepared to have that debate. But the lesson it teaches us is, what are we going to do to thwart it? What kind of setup do we have in place in order to thwart the opposition? Can we look at the situation? Can we look at who the opposition is? And how can we prevent them from bringing innocent third parties into what we're doing, into the results of what we're doing? So that's an important consideration any would-be magician has to take into account, and I have never once seen any magical literature or talked to anybody, any practicing magician, who has mentioned this or is willing to talk about this. Which I actually find that very strange, because as much experience as people have, as much experience as the people watching this broadcast have, this should be taken into consideration, and it should be taken into consideration, I believe, in a very public way. It's just like something I read many years ago. When entities cannot attack the magician personally, they will attack through those the magician loves. Family members may act funny. Pets and other animals may have an insane look in their eyes. If they can't get to you directly, they'll try to get to you indirectly. And in my experience as an exorcist, I learned that to be very true. Right, never saw it happen with a member of my family. I did see one of my cats come down with a sudden case of pyometria 10 years ago, because I had just detected an entity and was starting to fight it. An entity that was trying to get to one of my friends. So, how do we counter this? Jen says, that hit home, brother. Jen, I'll tell you, I first read that in one of your husband's books. Tell you more about that later on. Okay, so how do we set that up? What I would tell you right now is read some Sun Tzu. This is one thing I always talk about. I talk about this in my magical protection class in some detail. Anything you're going to do, treat it as an issue of strategy and tactics. At the very least, read Sun Tzu. Read The Art of War. Read about knowing the enemy. Read about gathering information. Read about the 5 conditions that determine victory. Read about this. Learn how to apply it in your situation. Learn what you can about who is it that might oppose you. You may not be able to account for everybody, but do your diligence. Who is it that might oppose you? Who is it that might want to see you undone, or who might want to see your results not manifest? What purposes might they have in mind for that? Again, you may not account for everybody. There might be somebody hiding in the shadows. You may have enemies you don't know anything about. But you can account for at least 75 to 80% of the problems you might face if you simply do your due diligence and do your reconnaissance. How to do the reconnaissance? That's up to you. It could be through scrying. It could be through just paying attention to the people around you and learning about them, what makes them tick. It can be through learning about the social systems and your social networks and as much as you can about the people there. But learn who that is. And then, what is their sphere of influence? Who can they influence? What tools do they have that can be used against you? Ditto for any entities you may talk to or who may be attracted by your workings. What are their tools? What are their abilities? Take all this into account before you do the magical work. By doing this, it will help to protect innocent people. That's the lesson to me of the Feast of the Holy Innocents. Innocent people can be trod underfoot during the course of your work, and you have an obligation. I won't say an obligation to make sure they come to zero harm whatsoever, because that's not necessarily possible. But you have an obligation to prevent as much harm as within your ability to do so. And if you find that you cannot do this working without too many innocent people being harmed in the process, I'm not trying to go all white light fluff bunny here, but if you find that to be the case, you're probably better off abandoning this particular working and finding a different way to get your goal. For example, I use the idea of, I find this perfect house. I actually did find a perfect house where I'd love to move to one day. I find this perfect house. Suppose somebody else wants that house too. Now, what if I do magic to make sure I get the house and the other person doesn't? What could happen? The person could keel over and have a heart attack. The realtor could lose spouse or kids in a car crash, and they wouldn't be able to do this house anymore, at least for a while. Any number of bad things can happen. So, or the other person who wants the house could be doing work against me, or could be willing, if they learn I want the house, they could be willing maybe to hurt my income streams. I can't afford the house right now anyway, so it's just a dream. But it's a good dream to have. It's an inspiration. I couldn't afford it anyway, but still, they could cut my income streams. They could talk to anybody that I might want to do business with, make sure I don't get the house. They could go after my family. I don't know what they could do. I don't know. And some people are depraved enough to do this. I don't think the random individual I'm talking about would do this, because I don't know who the random individual is. But the possibility is always there. Humanity is a case of rolling the dice. Roll the dice and pray you don't get a nat 1. That's humanity in a nutshell. So, you could either do magic for the hopes of them finding a house that better suits them, or you go ahead and get 3 or 4 alternate houses that you like. I actually have 2 in mind right now. 3 or 4 alternates that you like, and work on them instead. So, what that does is that expands your chances of getting what you want. Instead of being so narrowly focused on this one thing and nothing else, you can expand your chances. It also helps fewer people get in the way. So these are the lessons in a nutshell that I get from the Feast of St. Stephen, the Feast of St. John, and the Feast of the Holy Innocents. There's a wealth of material that can be mined by meditating on these. In fact, I would recommend doing Lectio Divina on the readings, the Epistle and the Gospel for these days. I'd recommend doing Lectio Divina, just meditating on the readings. Meditate on the readings, and maybe have in your mind, how can this affect my magical life? And then just come out with what you come up with in contemplation. In fact, if you want, feel free to post in the comments on the video if you do this exercise. So, as Christmas is the season of manifestation, I think it's good that we start off by the joy of manifestation and the side effects to watch out for on the way of manifesting. Because as you find yourself growing in the magical arts, as you find yourself growing in spirituality, and make no mistake, magical power is merely a side effect of a strong, vibrant spirituality. Make no mistake about that. That is the theurgical method. And so, as we do this, let's keep in mind, what are the possible issues that can happen when I do magical work for intention A or intention B, or to help person A or person B, or to help myself? What are the things that we can do to understand what could happen beforehand, and to prevent as much of the side effect as we can? Because even that time when I was doing magic for Rhiannon, yes, having women throw themselves at me, having a lot of women hit on me at one time, it may have seemed good at the time. But what if one of them was married and the husband was like jealous of the shotgun variety? Yeah, that could have cost me something. Side effects are not always good. That's why we want to be careful in terms of what to do with side effects. Now, through practice, and I'm saying this because I don't know what level you are when you see this video, whether you're watching now on Facebook or whether you see it on YouTube when I post it. I don't know what level you are. If you're advanced, you probably already know this stuff. You've probably already learned to adjust. If you are a beginner, it doesn't matter if you're working on the psychological or the spirit model. You will find that there are ways to adjust so that you're using just enough force to manifest your intention and avoid the side effects that can come by putting too much force into it, or getting something imperfect by putting not enough force at all. You will learn. You will figure it out with experience. Right now, don't shoot for the side effects. Try to concentrate on avoiding them. And with experience, you'll learn. But do your due diligence on all the circumstances and all the people that surround your working before you do the actual working. So, as we go further into Christmas, we're going to talk not just about manifestation, we're going to talk about manifestation as it grows into something that's shown. Oh God, that was a horrible play on words. Forget that I said that. But manifestation which becomes showing forth, which is what we'll see in the Epiphany. And then we're going to talk about growth after manifestation. Because from manifestation, there's growth. From growth, there comes a certain culling period, which we're going to get to in Septuagesima and Lent. But right now, we're going to focus on the Christmas season. From now until its natural end in February 2nd, different people say Christmas ends at different times. Episcopalians say Christmas ends on January 6th with the Epiphany. Catholics say it ends on February 2nd with the Feast of the Presentation. I've seen some sources say Christmas doesn't end until the Saturday before Septuagesima. But that's like an outlier. I've only seen that written in one place, so I'm going with February 2nd. Okay, so in the meantime, I ask you to enjoy the Christmas season for however long you say it lasts. I ask you to enjoy the gift of manifestation. And I ask you to enjoy that we have received the spirit of adoption, that we may overcome the elements, that we may overcome that spiritual childhood to which we were first bound. Because my aunt was right. hell is for children. I'm going to translate that right now as hell is for those people, hell on earth is for those people who do not know how to overcome the elements or their situations, or who refuse to do the work to overcome the elements or their situations. Don't be the person who refuses to do the work. Don't be the child, stammering and having temper tantrums and stamping your feet and expecting others to do your will. Be the adult. Be the child who is growing into an adult, the one who is maturing, learning to strengthen your will, to develop your will, and to manifest your will.